Welcome to the Flame Tree Myth and Fiction podcast.
This week we're slipping into something magical. 2 stories bound by a common thread, enchanted dresses. One bringing life and the other death. Together you could say they weave a pattern of love, loss and transformation. Our first story is The Wedding Dress, written and read by Cheryl S. Ntumy, a Ghanaian author of speculative fiction. This appears in Black Friday, a collection of her writing which came out in March as part of our Beyond and Within series. Let's take a listen.
The Wedding Dress by Cheryl S. Ntumy. She was the sort of girl who always got her way. I could see it in her pursed lips and raised eyebrows as she walked listlessly around the bridal shop, touching rolls of fabric with the tips of her fingers. She ran a thumb down the zips and carelessly tapped the nail of her forefinger against tiny plastic bottles of beads. She had come with an older woman, her mother, I guessed. She was dissatisfied, but I sensed that it had little to do with the wares. She had the air of someone generally unimpressed with life. I exchanged curious glances with Ntumy, the cashier. "Don't you have anything ready-made?" the customer demanded suddenly. "I can't be bothered to design a dress now." I put aside the sheet of chiffon I'd been cutting and smiled. "When is the big day?" "I can have it done between 3 days and 2 weeks." "The end of the month," her mother said proudly. I nodded. "That gives us plenty of time." The customer looked at me disdainfully. "You're going to make it yourself?" "Zanele," her mother chided. She turned to me apologetically. "We hear you've inherited every bit of your mother's skill." I smiled, touched by the compliment. "Thank you." I glanced at the bride. "If you like, I can help you design something, or show you the display room." She sniffed. "Let me see what you have, then I'll decide." "Zanele, really?" her mother cajoled as I led them through the shop to the display room. "You always wanted to design your dress." "When I was 10, Zanele retorted. For a bride-to-be, she didn't seem very happy. My friends thought I was insane, but I insisted on making every dress myself, as my mother had done. I was determined to maintain her legacy. Zanele's scowl didn't budge. She sighed at every dress her mother liked, pointing out details that made it all wrong. Too many sequins or not enough, too simple or too ornate. "For heaven's sake," her mother cried eventually. "These are lovely gowns. Can't you just pick one?" "It's all right," I assured her. "After all, it's the most important day of your daughter's life. She wants it to be perfect." "See?" Zanele said triumphantly. "She deals with brides all the time. She understands." She took another perfunctory glance around the room. Then her eyes lit up. "What's that?" She began to walk towards the red curtain at the end of the room. "Oh, that's just the storeroom," I told her, but she had already pulled the curtain aside. I followed her inside, sighing. "There's nothing." My heart caught in my throat. She was standing in front of a white satin gown sheathed in plastic. Little organic swirls of silver were embroidered into the hem, spiraling wildly around each other, and curling in on themselves like startled starfish. Vague, leaf-like shapes sprouted here and there along the stems. It was made of what seemed like endless layers of fabric, held fast with thread and zips and buttons. Yet it had an air of fragility, as if one touch could dissolve it into a pile of white ash. "This one," Zanele announced, turning to me gleefully. "It's perfect." "I'm sorry," I told her tersely. "It's not for sale." "What do you mean?" she barked. "You think I can't afford it? I'll pay whatever you want. Tell her, Mama." "Money's no problem," her mother assured me. "I want her to have the best." I resisted the urge to seize the dress and run away with it. "It's not about money. It's not for sale." "Is it for someone else?" asked Zanele, baffled. "Not another customer. Then I don't see the problem." I took a deep breath. "It's my mother's dress." Zanele glanced at the dress. She wore it to her wedding? I shook my head, feeling panic bubble up inside me. It's the last dress she made before her death. The memories returned, almost suffocating me. I could see my mother sitting at the table at home, eyes fixed on the task in front of her, brow furrowed and jaw set. Her shoulders were hunched forward. Her long, graceful neck was pushed down into her raised shoulders, and her arms were stiff. It was a wonder that she could sew at all in that awkward position. And her hands, they moved like insects, flying across the fabric, measuring, cutting, and running cloth through the sewing machine so fast that I could barely keep up. Zanele's plaintive voice brought me back to the present. She wouldn't want it to stay here gathering dust, she reasoned. Zanele, her mother shook her head. Let's go back and take another look at the ones on display. I don't want those, Zanele cried petulantly. I want this one. I stared at the dress. The thought of her wearing it filled me with horror. An image of my mother flashed into my mind, a pin in her mouth as she bent over the bodice of the gown. I'm sorry, it's not possible. All right, Zanele said suddenly, smiling sweetly. As the last dress your mother made, it must mean a lot to you. But I've looked all over Joburg, and I haven't found anything I like. You know a bride must have the perfect dress. So, I'm willing to compromise. I'll rent it from you, she suggested. Just for the day. I'll fetch it in the morning and have my mother return it after the reception. It'll only be gone for a few hours. My heart was racing. Give the bride whatever she wants, my mother had always said. She had prided herself on pleasing the most difficult of customers. No matter how ridiculous the demand, she had made it happen. I remembered sitting with her as she attached leaves or photographs to dresses. Even if nothing else went right on the wedding day, the dress would be perfect. But this wasn't just any dress. Please, Zanele coaxed. It would mean so much to me. I'll take care of it, I promise. I knew what my mother would have done, but I searched frantically for reasons not to give in. It won't fit you, I blurted out. Zanele grinned. If it doesn't fit, I'll back off, she said. But if it does, you'll have to rent it to me. Agreed? I nodded, certain that it wouldn't fit. Zanele was slender, and most of my mother's dresses had been designed for curvy women. Zanele wasted no time in stripping down to her underwear and removing the dress from the hanger. I watched her put it on. My heart sank. It was a perfect fit. She clapped her hands in delight. Mama, look! Her mother beamed. Gorgeous! They turned to me expectantly. I had no choice. I had set a trap for myself and fallen right in. I offered a weak smile. You're going to be a lovely bride. Zanele let out a whoop of joy. I helped her out of the gown. When she left the shop, she was like a different woman. Lindiwe looked at me. Are you sure about this? Give the bride whatever she wants, I replied softly. I had trouble falling asleep that night. I kept reliving the last week before my mother died. I had always loved weddings, the decorations, the flowers, the smiling faces, but most of all the dresses. From the moment I had walked barefoot into the unexpected flood of fabric on the dining room floor, I had known that this dress would be different. I had woken up to get a drink of water and found my mother so engrossed in her work that she didn't see me standing in the shadows. A sea of white satin, the color of the full moon, flowed from beneath her hands and came to rest in a crumpled heap on the carpet. A sheet of organza lay on the table behind her, the beginning of a veil. I watched until I was too sleepy to stay up. For 7 nights, I crept through the house in the darkness to watch her work. In those silent hours, I saw the mass of fabric come to life. My mother had never finished a dress so quickly, and she had never made a more beautiful masterpiece. When she finally finished, her hands were shaking. I was shocked by how weak she looked. It was as if the dress had devoured part of her spirit. Her face was haggard and thin, and shadows darkened her eyes. It's done, she whispered, and lay her head on the table. I wanted to wake her and tell her to go to bed, but I was afraid she would be angry with me for intruding. I turned off the light and went to sleep. In the morning, woken by my father's anguished cry, I leapt out of bed and ran to the dining room. I found him kneeling beside my mother's seated figure. I knew, before he said a word, that she was dead. The dress, it seemed, had killed her. Now, as I lay in bed, I finally accepted the truth. I wasn't attached to the dress. I was afraid of it. My fear hardly made sense, even to me. How could I explain my belief that my mother had poured her life into the dress? When Zanele had tried it on in the shop, nothing had happened, and logically there was no reason why anything should. But I couldn't shake the dread that had settled over me. Zanele came for the dress 3 weeks later. I handed it over with a plastic smile and a silent prayer. "Are you okay?" Ntumy asked gently. "Fine," I lied. The hours dragged on. Ntumy got up to take her lunch break. "Do you want anything?" I shook my head. I was too nervous to eat. Finally, Zanele's mother walked into the bridal shop. The dress was wrapped safely in its sheath. I ran to the door to meet her. "How did the dress look?" I asked frantically. "Did everything go well?" She laughed at my anxiety. "Hi, why do you look so worried?" she asked, bemused. "Everything went beautifully. The dress looked perfect. In fact, I have never seen my daughter so happy. She didn't complain about a single thing." Relief flooded through me. "A wedding is a happy occasion." "No, it was the dress," she told me with certainty. "Something happened to Zanele when she put it on. You saw how her face lit up when she tried it on for the first time." She gave me a conspiratorial wink. "I think your mother must have put a lot of love into this dress." She patted the dress fondly and looked up at me. "You should take care of it." She thanked me again and waved goodbye. I turned to Ntumy. "It looks like you made the right choice after all," she remarked. I looked at the dress in wonder. A month later, I was studying a customer's designs for bridesmaids' dresses when a customer entered the shop, followed by a familiar young woman. "Zanele!" I exclaimed in surprise. She smiled. "I've brought you a new customer." She turned to her companion. "This is my cousin. She needs a gorgeous gown in a hurry, and I told her this is the best shop in the city." I grinned broadly at the praise. "Welcome. Let me show you what we have." I led them into the display area. "You've changed things," Zanele declared. "There are now dresses for hire." I smiled, waiting. After sifting through the gowns for hire, she gasped. Among them was a satin dress with silver beadwork, the dress I had never wanted to share. "What made you change your mind?" Zanele asked in surprise. "My mother always said, give the bride what she wants," I told her. "From now on, that's exactly what I intend to do."
I really love this one. There's something really beautiful about the way that the dress becomes a vessel for memory and joy, and it's just a really sweet story. Now onto something somewhat darker. The next story is The Crimson Weaver by Robert Murray Gilchrist, a writer from the late 1800s best known today for his decadent and gothic short fiction. This appears in our collection Weird Horror, and you will see that it's exactly that.
The Crimson Weaver by R. Murray Gilchrist. My master and I had wandered from our track and lost ourselves on the side of a great edge. It was a 2 days' journey from the valley of the willow brakes, and we had roamed aimlessly, eating at hollow echoing inns where grey-haired hostesses ministered, and sleeping side by side through the dewless midsummer nights on beds of fresh-gathered heather. Beyond a single arched wall-less bridge that crossed a brown stream whose waters leaped straight from the upland, we reached the domain of the Crimson Weaver. No sooner had we reached the keystone when a beldam, wrinkled as a walnut and bold as an egg, crept from the cabin of turf and osier and held out her hands in warning. "Enter not the domain of the Crimson Weaver," she shrieked. "One I loved entered, and I am here to warn men. Behold, I was beautiful once." She tore her ragged smock apart and discovered the foulness of her bosom, where the heart pulsed beneath a curtain of livid skin. My master drew money from his wallet and scattered it on the ground. "She is mad," he said. "The evil she hints cannot exist. There is no fiend." So he passed on, but the bridge-keeper took no heed of the coins. For a while we heard her bellowed sighs issuing from the openings of her den. Strangely enough, the tenor of our talk changed from the moment that we left the bridge. He had been telling me of the Platonists, but when our feet pressed the sun-dried grass, I was impelled to question him of love. It was the first time that I had thought of the matter. "How does passion first touch a man's life?" I asked, laying my hand on his arm. His ruddy colour faded. He smiled wryly. "You divine what passes in my brain?" he replied. I had also begun to meditate. "But I may not tell you. In my boyhood, I was scarce older than you at the time, I loved a true paragon. 'Twere sacrilege to speak of the birth of passion. Let it suffice that ere I tasted of wedlock, the woman died, and her death sealed for ever the door of that chamber of my heart. Yet, if one might see therein, there is an altar crowned with ever-burning tapers, and with wreaths of unwithering asphodels." By this time we had reached the skirt of a yew forest, traversed in every direction by narrow paths. The air was moist and heavy, but ever and anon a light wind touched the tree-tops and bowed them, so that pollen sank in golden veils to the ground. Everywhere we saw half-ruined fountains, satyrs vomiting senilely, nymphs emptying wine upon the lambent flames of dying phoenixes, creatures that were neither satyrs nor nymphs nor griffins, but grotesque adminglings of them all, slain by one another, with water gushing from wounds in belly and thigh. At length the path we had chosen terminated beside an oval mere that was surrounded by a colonnade of moss-grown arches. Huge pike quivered on the muddy bed. Crayfish moved sluggishly among the weeds. There was an island in the middle, where a leaden Diana more compassionate than a crocodile caressed Actaeon's horns, ere delivering him to his hounds. The huntress's head and shoulders were white with the excrement of a crowd of culvers that moved as if entangled in a snare. Northwards an avenue rose, for a space of a mile, to fall abruptly before an azure sky. For many years the yew must on the path had been undisturbed by human foot. It was covered with a crust of greenest lichen. My master pressed my fingers. "There is evil in the air of this place," he said. "I am strong, but you may not endure. We will return." "'Tis an enchanted country," I made answer feverishly. "At the end of yonder avenue stands the palace of the sleeping maiden who awaits the kiss. Nay, since we have pierced the country this far, let us not draw back. You are strong, master. No evil can touch us." So we fared to the place where the avenue sank, and then our eyes fell on the wondrous sight of a palace, lying in a concave plissons, all treeless but so bestarred with fainting flowers that neither blade of grass nor grain of earth was visible. Then came the rustling of wings above our heads, and looking skywards I saw flying towards the house a flock of culvers, like unto those that had drawn themselves over Diana's head. The hindmost bird dropped its neck, and behold, it gazed upon us with the face of a mannequin. "They are charm birds, made thus by the whim of the princess," I said. As the birds passed through the portals of a columbery that crowned a western tower, their white wings beat against the silver bell that glistened there, and the whole valley was filled with music. My master trembled and crossed himself. "In the name of our mother," he exclaimed, "let us return. I dare not trust your life here." But a great door in front of the palace swung open, and a woman with a swaying walk came out to the terrace. She wore a robe of crimson, worn into tatters at skirt hem and shoulders. She had been forewarned of our presence, for her face turned instantly in our direction. She smiled subtly, and her smile died away into the most tempting sadness. She caught up such remnants of her skirt as trailed behind, and strutted about with the gait of a peacock. As the sun touched the glossy fabric, I saw eyes enwrought in deeper hue. My master still trembled, but he did not move, for the gaze of the woman was fixed upon him. His brows twisted, and his white hair rose and stood erect, as if he viewed some unspeakable horror. Stooping, with sidelong motions of the head, she approached, bringing with her the smell of such an incense as when amidst eastern herbs burn the corse. She was perfect of feature as the Diana, but her skin was deathly white and her lips fretted with pain. She took no heed of me, but knelt at my master's feet, a Magdalene before an impregnable priest. "Prince and lord, tower of chastity here," she murmured. "For lack of love I perish. See my robe in tatters." He strove to avert his face, but his eyes still dwelt upon her. She half rose and shook nut-brown tresses over his knees. Youth came back in a flood to my master. His shriveled skin filled out. The dying sunlight turned to gold the whiteness of his hair. He would have raised her had I not caught his hands. The anguish of foreboding made me cry, "One forces roughly the door of your heart's chamber. The wreaths wither, the tapers bend and fall." He grew old again. The crimson weaver turned to me. "Oh, Marplot," she said laughingly, "think not to vanquish me with folly. I am too powerful. Once that a man enter my domain, he is mine." But I drew my master away. "'Tis I who am strong," I whispered. "We will go hence at once. Surely we will find our way back to the bridge. The journey is easy." The woman, seeing that the remembrance of an old love was strong within him, sighed heavily and returned to the palace. As she reached the doorway, the valves opened, and I saw in a distant chamber beyond the hall an ivory loom with a golden stool. My master and I walked again on the track we had made in the yew-mast, but twilight was falling, and ere we could reach the pool of Diana, all was in utter darkness. And so, at the foot of a tree where no ant-hill rose, we lay down and slept. Dreams came to me, gorgeous visions from the romances of old. Everywhere I sought vainly for a beloved. There was the castle of the ebony dwarf, where a young queen reposed the innermost casket of the 7th crystal cabinet. There was the chamber of gloom, where Lenore danced, and where I groped for ages around columns of living flesh. There was the white minaret, where 21 princesses poised themselves on balls of burnished bronze. There was Melisandre's arbour, where the sacred toads crawled over the enchanted cloak. Unrest fretted me. I woke in spiritual pain. Dawn was breaking, a bright yellow dawn, and the glades were full of vapours. I turned to the place where my master had lain. He was not there. I felt with my hands over his bed. It was key-cold. Terror of my loneliness overcame me, and I sat with a covered face. On the ground near my feet lay a broken riband, whereupon was strung a heart of chrysolite. It enclosed a knot of ash-coloured hair of the girl my master had loved. The mists gathered together and passed sunwards in one long, many-cornered veil. When the last shred had been drawn into the great light, I gazed along the avenue and saw the topmost bartizan of the Crimson Weaver's palace. It was midday before I dared start on my search. The culvers beat around my head. I walked in pain, as though giant spiders had woven about my body. On the terrace, strange beasts, dogs and pigs with human limbs, tore ravenously at something that lay on the balustrade. At the sight of me, they paused and lifted their snouts and bayed. A while afterwards the culvers rang the silver bell, and the monsters dispersed hurriedly amongst the drooping blossoms of the pleasance, and where they had swarmed I saw naught but a streaming sanguine pool. I approached the house, and the door fell open, admitting me to a chamber adorned with embellishments beyond the witchery of art. There I lifted my voice and cried eagerly, my master, where is my master?" The alcove sent out a babble of echoes, blended together like a harp chord on a dulcimer. My master, where is my master? For the love of Christ, where is my master?" The echo only replied, "Where is my master?" Above swung a globe of topaz, where 100 suns gambolled. From its centre a convoluted horn, held by a crimson cord, sank lower and lower. It stayed before my lips, and I blew therein, and heard the sweet voices of youth chant in one accord. "Fall open, O doors, fall open, and show the way to the princess." Ere the last of the echoes had died, a vista opened, and at the end of an alabaster gallery I saw the crimson weaver at her loom. She had doffed her tattered robe for one new and lustrous as fresh-drawn blood, and marvellous as her beauty had seemed before, its wonder now increased 100-fold. She came towards me with the same stately walk, but there was now a lightness in her demeanour that suggested the growth of wings. Within an arm's length she curtsied, and curtsying showed me the firmness of her shoulders, the fullness of her breast. The sight brought no pleasure. My cracking tongue appealed in agony. "My master! Where is my master?" She smiled happily. "Nay, do not trouble. He is not here. His soul talks with the culvers in the cote. He has forgotten you. In the night we supped, and I gave him of nepenthe." "Where is my master? Yesterday he told me of the shrine in his heart, of ever-fresh flowers, of a love dead yet living." Her eyebrows curved mirthfully. "'Tis foolish boys' talk," she said. "If you sought till the end of time, you would never find him, unless I choose. Yet, if you buy of me myself to name the price." I looked around hopelessly at the unimaginable riches of her home. All that I have is this manor of the willow brakes, a Moorish park, an ancient house where the thatch gapes and the casements swing loose. "My possessions are pitiable," I said, "but they are all yours. I give all to save him." "Fool, fool," she cried, "I have no need of gear. If I but raise my hand, all the riches of the world fall to me. 'Tis not what I wish for." Into her eyes came such a glitter as the moon makes on the moist skin of a sleeping snake. The firmness of her lips relaxed. They grew childlike in their softness. The atmosphere became almost tangible. I could scarce breathe. "What is it? All that I can do, if it be no sin." "Come with me to my loom," she said, "and if you do the thing I desire, you shall see him. There is no evil in it. In past times kings have sighed for the same." So I followed slowly to the loom, before which she had seated herself, and watched her deftly passing crimson thread over crimson thread. She was silent for a space, and in that space her beauty fascinated me, so that I was no longer master of myself. "What you wish for I shall give, even if it be life." The loom ceased. "A kiss on the mouth, and you shall see him who passed in the night." She clasped her arms about my neck and pressed my lips. For one moment heaven and earth ceased to be. There was one paradise where we were sole governors. Then she moved back and drew aside the web and showed me the head of my master, and the bleeding heart whence a crimson cord unravelled into many threads. "I wear men's lives," the woman said. "Life is necessary to me, or even I, who have existed from the beginning, must die. But yesterday I feared the end, and he came. His soul is not dead. 'Tis the truth that it plays with my culvers." I fell back. "Another kiss," she said. "Unless I wish, there is no escape for you. Yet you may return to your home, though my power over you shall never wane. Once more, lip to lip." I crouched against the wall like a terrified dog. She grew angry. Her eyes darted fire. "A kiss," she cried, "for the penalty." My master's poor head, ugly and cadaverous, glared from the loom. I could not move. The crimson weaver lifted her skirts, uncovering feet shapen as those of a vulture. I fell prostrate. With her claws she fumbled about the flesh of my breast. Moving away, she bade me pass from her sight. So, half dead, I lie here at the manor of the willow brakes, watching hour by hour the bloody clue ever unwinding from my heart and passing over the western hills to the palace of the siren.
Well, that was considerably less heartwarming. If the first story made you want to rent a magical gown, this one might make you think twice. I just want to give a big thank you to our authors and narrators, especially Cheryl, who came into the Flame Tree office to record her story. You can find out more about everyone involved in the episode description. And of course, thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're hungry for more, check out Black Friday and Weird Horror, or browse our full range of chilling reads on our website. There are plenty more where these came from.
Thanks so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Flame Tree Myth and Fiction podcast and look forward to the next episode. Do recommend it to your friends. Goodbye for now.